All right, and we are now recording. And now I'm just going to mute us, but as soon as we start, if you want to unmute and participate, that is absolutely fine. Okay, let's see. Mute all. Got it. All right. Yes. All right, everybody can hear me. The volume is okay. Very good. Okay. We talked about holy days, holy moments, and I told you that in addition to 52 Shabbases every single year, one for each week, we also had 7 major occasions on which we observed major Jewish holidays in order to confront God in the midst of time. And as Jews, we are very conscious of the fact that Jews did not mark sanctity in terms of place, we marked it in terms of time. The reason being, if you know anything about Jewish history, we have built holy places before, but history has not been too kind to us. Many of the holy sites connected with the Jewish people have, over the course of the centuries and millennia, been destroyed. So when you try and create spaces of holiness and you attempt them to go on forever and ever, it really doesn't happen too often. Maybe the pyramids go back to ancient times, but it's hard to think about too many Jewish sites that are ancient sites that go back to biblical times, at least structures. But when it comes to time, Jews have managed to create in the Sabbath and the holidays sanctuaries and time. But there is something more common than sanctuaries and time. Because what do we do every single day, basically about 3 times a day, not allowing for noshing? We eat. There is nothing we do that is probably more regular apart from breathing, but take breathing out of the equation. Eating and drinking are what we do at least 3 times a day in formal meals. And for most of us, if we snack in between, or we refresh ourselves, or we provide ourselves, we hydrate ourselves a lot more times than once a week, or even 7 more times a year, we are constantly thinking about God, because the act of eating, which we share in common with every creature, living creature of the universe, that act of eating is a repetitive act which we do again and again and again, day after day, throughout our life, from the moment we're first born and we start taking nutrition from our mothers to the moment we leave this world. We can take the act of eating, which is an animal act, and we can turn it into a holy act. And that's what tonight's lecture is about. It is about how can we turn the act of eating into a way of encountering God, how can we take a physical act and turn it into a religious act, make it a spiritual act? How can we become holy through the way in which we eat? Now, it used to be when I did these kinds of classes, I had to speak to people for a while about the significance of diet. I don't have to do that anymore because everybody's on some kind of a diet or not. When I talk about diets today, I don't even have to go any further. Everybody's on some kind of a diet. People diet for all different kinds of reasons, having to do with health, having to do with aesthetics, having to do with religion, having to do with self-control. There are many reasons people diet. So let's begin with the obvious question, and I'm going to invite all of you to participate as well. The 2 questions that I want to begin with are the following 2. Try and start with one of them, and then we'll turn to the second one. The first question is this: why do we, as human beings, eat? Why do we, as human beings, eat? And you can add, why do we eat certain kinds of food? Eileen, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
To nourish our bodies.
All right. If we didn't eat, we die. By the way, the average time a person can live without hydration, without water, less than a week. If you try to deprive yourself of all water in probably less than a week, you will probably not make it if you go on a very, very severe fast with no water at all. We can make it a little longer if we drink, but we do not eat. I remember watching the movie Gandhi, and Gandhi periodically would demonstrate against this or that by going on a hunger or a fast strike. And he was cared for, and he lived for these periods of stress. He lived a number of days. You can, if you are taking liquid in, you can restrain yourself from eating, but after certainly a few weeks, you're not going to be doing very well. So Eileen's answer is correct. We eat in order to survive. I eat, therefore I survive. Okay, we eat in order that we may survive. Like all living things, animals and even plants, in a sense, we need nutrition. We cannot survive merely by our will. Even if we are very strong people and we come from very good genetic background, if we deprive ourselves of food and water for any serious length of time, it will impact negatively our health. So number one reason, why do we eat? We eat for the same reason other things do, for nutrition, for life. Why else do we eat? Can anyone give me the first question? Can anyone tell me, Lori, why do we eat? Go ahead.
To commemorate certain events.
Okay.
Like on Purim, we eat the Hamantash, and on Passover, we eat certain foods. And so each holiday has a certain food.
Very good. On my birthday, I eat birthday cake every birthday, and if my wife isn't looking, I manage to sneak some ice cream too. But the point is, we eat to celebrate events, and whether it's a formal meal, as Lori is talking about, celebrating a religious event, or even if it is a social occasion where we gather together with friends, nothing makes a social meeting better than food. I think Judaism figured out that idea a long time ago. You want to have a successful event, serve food and invite people. You'll always get a big attendance, and food will always add an element to the event itself. All right. So we eat to survive. We eat to come together and celebrate and be together as family and friends. Go ahead, Carol. I see your hand.
We eat for pleasure because eating is fun and eating tastes good. And so we do it for pleasure as well.
Right. I mean, for most of us, we don't eat just to survive. We eat because it's pleasurable. When we get up in the morning, especially after maybe a long night of sleep, we're hungry, we're thirsty. And whether you mark the beginning of your day with a cup of coffee, or whether it's toast and eggs or cereal or whatever it is you eat, eating during the day is pleasurable. There's no question about it. People eat not merely to survive, but eating is a source of pleasure. And usually, if you eat responsibly, it doesn't hurt you. Whereas some people will get up the first thing in the morning and light a cigarette and smoke it. That's not a good thing to do. But if you get up in the morning, especially if you're watching what you're eating and you're eating things that are not bad for your health, you can get up in the morning and you eat, and it's a pleasurable experience. All right, so we have pleasure, we have celebration, and we have nutrition. Anybody want to add to the reasons for which we eat? Why else might we eat? Okay, fine. Larry, Jerry, you were going to say something.
I can think of perhaps a couple that if we're have a hard job, we're eating to nourish ourselves. Maybe we have to eat specific things like blueberries, Greek yogurt. Then scientists tell us that certain vegetables and fruits are more healthy, perhaps to anti-cancer fighting.
Yeah, and not even just health. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I go a certain number of hours into a new day and I don't eat, I can't concentrate. I can't focus. I can't think. I can't just perform. Forget about health reasons. I just cannot function. Apart from the pleasure, I can't function without eating something. Ira, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
I was going to say mental acuity, just like you were saying.
Absolutely. It's not only something that we need nutritionally for our bodies to maintain our mental acuity, to maintain our ability to concentrate. We need to eat. Anybody else? Any other things we have not covered? Is that Eileen, are you raising your hand? I can't tell. Yeah. Unmute, Eileen.
To perfect the recipe, you've got to keep tasting it until you get to the quintessential taste.
Leave it to a cook to come up with another reason, right? I've never learned this reason, but I'm told this is true, and other people have told me this too, Eileen, that if you are a cook, you cannot really prepare food without tasting it. And I've watched enough chefs on enough of these restaurant shows doing their thing, and they're trying to perfect something, and they constantly are tasting. And I say, why are they tasting? Well, they're tasting in order to get it right, because if it's too spicy or not spicy enough, or it lacks a certain flavor. So if you're preparing food, you eat in order to make sure it's right, because you can't tell just by the consistency or just by a formula, a recipe. You need to actually taste the food. All right, good. Anybody else? Go ahead, Jerry. And then we'll go to Harvey. Go ahead, Jerry.
You reminded me of something else regarding your feelings when you don't eat breakfast soon enough. So I will get hangry, or Arlene says I get angry. And recently we had an opportunity to get some latkes, and I could smell them, and there was a very big line, and I wanted to get in the line quickly to get them, and that's all I got was to smell them because they ran out. So I got angry.
Yes, no, and I do too. And especially if I haven't had my first cup of coffee in the morning, my ability to defer gratification goes way, way down. I can stand in a restaurant and wait for a while, but if I wasn't anticipating waiting and we got to a restaurant and it was very, very crowded and I'm sitting there, unless they're serving me coffee or something to keep me going, I also get angry. My wife says that's a problem I have, that I've got to learn to be patient, but it affects my mood. It's not only just my health, it agitates me when food isn't ready when it's supposed to be. And I even like the social experience of eating. Even if I'm not at my own table, I like to go out. I like to talk with people. For me, eating is a wonderful way to socialize. And if you've had an opportunity to go out with people that you like and you socialize with them, food just makes everything better. Arlene, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, it's also hard to really eat if you can't smell the food. And I know with COVID, a lot of people have lost their sense of smell since they were sick. And it's very hard to even taste something if you can't smell it.
Very true. And thank God I have not ever developed COVID, thank God so far. And I've never certainly lost my sense of smell, but I have heard the same thing. Part of the pleasure of eating is not just the tasting of the food, it is the smell of the food. And when you lose your sense of smell, your whole appreciation for what you eat, it dissipates. People who take certain medications or whatnot, and one of the results of the medication is they lose their sense of taste or it's dulled. They don't last on those kinds of medications long, because the pleasure of eating is so reduced that they have to go back to, tasting and smelling and enjoying their food again. All right, anything else? Okay. Oh yes, I'm sorry, Barb. Wait, there was someone before Barbara. It was Arlene and Barbara. Go ahead.
Also, if you're alone, it's very hard to eat. You don't have an appetite. It's hard. When you're eating, you want to enjoy it with someone. So single people, it's very difficult.
Yeah. Try sitting in front of a TV set watching your favorite show without anything to eat while you're doing it. Okay. You don't have to be with people. It doesn't have to be a social occasion. You don't have to eat because you're starving or because you can't concentrate. When I sit in front of a television set, when I go to a movie and I watch a movie on the screen, if I don't have my popcorn or I don't have my this or I don't have my that, I just don't enjoy the experience. To me, the experience involves food. So there are lots of reasons. I guess what we're saying, Barbara, go ahead. You were going to add something too. Unmute, Barbara.
I was going to say the plating of the food, how it's presented, also gives you a feeling of hunger, something that you want to taste. Plating is very important when it comes to presenting your food from on the table.
Very, very good. Barbara is saying there's an aesthetic aspect to eating too. If you go to very fine restaurants, it's not just that they make the food well and it's good food, but the way they present it, the way it's prepared, the way it's positioned, the way it's introduced to the diner, that whole aesthetic of eating. It's not merely a taste experience or a smell experience. It's actually a whole aesthetic experience that combines so many things together. Very good. All right. Lori, go ahead.
Also, with certain medications like antibiotics, you have to eat, otherwise it gets you sick.
Thank you, Lori.
Or if you're diabetic, you have to eat in order to keep your blood sugars in control.
That's
So
true.
there's a lot of like medical stuff that you have to be aware of that goes along with eating.
Not only eating, drinking as well. One of the things
Drinking,
I
yeah.
discovered is as we get older, our sense of thirst dissipates. We don't feel as thirsty as often, but someone told me that can be a very dangerous thing for older people, because the truth is we need to hydrate regularly, and sometimes you don't feel the need to drink, and we go and we go and we go, and the results can be fainting, can be quite catastrophic. So right, we eat because medically our condition, our bodily condition, our health will be impacted if we don't eat at regular times and we eat regular things. All right, you've got it all. Okay, no problem figuring out why we eat. But now let me ask question number 2, and that gets us into our topic this evening. Why do we, human beings, why do we refrain from eating food or certain kinds of food at whatever periods of time we do? In other words, not why do we eat. It's clear why we eat. We eat for health, we eat for nutrition, we eat for satisfaction, we eat for aesthetic purposes. But why would people choose not to eat? Okay, I'm asking the question. Okay, in general, what would be the reasons that would cause a person to say, I will eat this, but I will not eat that? I will not eat certain kinds of foods. I will not eat at certain kinds of times. What considerations go? And I'm going to let you have a stab at it first before I go at it. What causes people to refrain from eating certain foods at certain times? Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, first I would think it may be regard a medical procedure somebody has coming up, where they have to refrain from particular foods, or even 12 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Either a medical procedure, you're going in for blood tests, and your doctor says to you, okay, last meal of the day, you can have dinner, but after dinner, you go to sleep, don't eat anything in the morning because it'll affect your blood chemistry. If you eat, we won't get accurate tests. Leslie, go ahead.
Well, I think historically they found that certain foods or certain like mushrooms or different things like that cause people to be sick.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also sensitivities that people have. I don't know how many people here, I can't eat cilantro. I don't break out into hives or anything, and apparently that's a genetic allergy, so to speak.
That is correct. And whether it is cilantro, there are people who have allergies to nuts. There are people who have allergies to all kinds of things. There are food restrictions which we maintain because if we ate certain things, we know from past experience that we would develop a severe reaction. There are certain things my wife can't eat, otherwise she feels her throat tightening up. She carries an EpiPen with her when she goes out because she knows what she's allergic to and what she's not. But God forbid she has an allergic reaction. That can be dangerous. Go ahead, Eileen.
Laws of kashrut or God's laws?
All right, good. So some people refrain from eating for religious reasons. Very good, Eileen. Okay, Esther, go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing Eileen said.
Okay.
Religious reasons.
Okay, religious reason. Anybody, general categories? Barbara, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it would be it's under religious reasons, but like for a holiday like Yom Kippur, you're told to fast.
All right. So, religious reasons can not only restrict what you can eat, they can restrict eating, period. If it's Yom Kippur and you say, I could really go for a hamburger right now, Rabbi, can you help me out? I'd say, well, can you try and make it without the hamburger? Because I'd rather not give you the hamburger unless it's a health reason or give you anything, because I don't want you to eat. If it's fasting for Tisha B'Av or some sad reason, I would urge you not to eat because of the importance of the day. So very good, Barbara. Religious reasons, building on what Eileen has said, fasting for religious purposes. Saw someone else's hand. Joseph, go ahead, and then Harvey.
When there's certain times in a year or a couple years where my pants get too tight. And I realize that if I want to wear the clothes I want to wear, I need to stop eating snacks and eating certain foods to be able to fit in my clothes.
I call that an aesthetic reason, Joseph. Aesthetics, weight gain, getting too big for your clothing, putting on too many pounds. The doctor says, you're reaching a point where you got to start restricting your intake. But it could be other kinds of things as well. Good. Aesthetic reasons, not only for health, but because I don't particularly like the way I look. And therefore, I'm going to monitor the way that I eat. I'm going to restrict myself from eating certain foods, whatever they are, because I want to lose weight or because I want to maintain a better figure. I've learned in life that just eating isn't enough. You've got to also do exercise, but that's another story. All right. Before I get to Leslie, who else did I see? Esther and then Leslie. And then, Harvey, it was Harvey. Okay, Harvey, go ahead.
Well, we don't eat certain foods because we don't like the way they taste.
Okay. Taste is a big part of it. My wife can cook Brussels sprouts, anytime she wants. And I cannot eat Brussels sprouts. I just can't eat them. I don't know whether it's a texture, the taste, whatever it is, I can't eat it. On my salad, I like a lot of different dressings, but certain kinds of vinegars I cannot abide. If vinegar is on the salad, I cannot eat it. There are certain kinds of cheeses, not just Limburger cheeses, but other very sharp cheeses that I cannot abide. If cheese is on something, I can't eat it. I can't manage to get it down. And there are all kinds of other foods probably as well, where if you don't eat them, you can't eat them. For example, I love what are called ethnic foods. No one said we eat for ethnic reasons, cultural reasons. I grew up eating deli. I grew up eating kasha vanishkas and all kinds of other Jewish foods that were traditional that my grandparents and my parents made. My wife doesn't like most of them. And consequently, when I want chopped liver or I want this or that or the other kind of ethnic food, I got to go to someone else because she says, I can't stand the smell of it. I can't cook it for you. So we eat because it tastes good, because it's appealing, because it reminds us of what we ate when we grew up. And I don't care what tradition you're from, whether it's Hispanic or whether it's Jewish or whether it's Russian or whatever, we all have our favorite foods that we associate with our childhood, foods that we associate with experiences growing up. And we're just drawn to those foods, even if we know it's not good. Believe me, I know it's not good to eat matzah with schmaltz, with animal fat on it. To eat, I know it's not good. I know it's not healthy to eat deli. But every once in a while, I'm in the mood for deli, and I go to get deli, no matter if it's good for me or not. So taste. All right, Leslie, you were Harvey. Did you already answer?
Oh yeah, I'm the one that gave the last.
Right. Okay, Esther, and then Leslie. Esther, did you have? Oh, you didn't. I'm sorry, Leslie. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to go into the psychological thing. I mean, there are things that we have like bulimia or whatever, and things that I know I can't eat butter at all. My mother said that some kid must have told me sometime that I would die if I ate it. I have an actual physical reaction
Aversion to it.
And my grandmother was brought up kosher, whatever. The first time somebody actually let her know she was eating bacon or whatever, she actually threw up. Mm-hmm. And there was no reason for that other than psychologically she was not supposed to have that, and it was a mental reaction.
I have the same problem, Leslie. I know mayonnaise is not milk, but if you take mayonnaise and put it on a pastrami sandwich, that's sacrilege. You do not put mayonnaise on a salami sandwich and you just don't do it. You don't put it on a hot dog. I don't know why it is, and I probably could eat it without getting physically sick, but there are just certain things that it's not meant to be. My mother, Aleha Shalom, used to love her eggs with ketchup. I could never understand that. I could never understand eggs and ketchup, but she loved it and that was fine. So you're right, Leslie. There are psychological reasons why you just can't manage to open your mouth and put that in your mouth because it's so psychologically intimidating. It's almost like a taboo. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, you guys have done an excellent job. I'm going to review some of them, but we have all kinds of categories. What you've talked about and some ones you haven't talked about yet have to do with the reasons why people restrict themselves and why they limit themselves to certain diets. It used to be I had to justify kashrut to my audience. They'd say, well, what's this business about eating certain foods for religious reasons? I said, wait a second. There are people who eat foods for all kinds of reasons. Why are you picking on religious reasons? Like to eat certain foods or not eat certain foods for religious reasons, that's taboo. But to do it for other kinds of reasons, well, I can understand that. So let's go through some of the other reasons that people have diets. And I hope to show you tonight in half an hour that it is not so strange. What we call the kashrut, the Jewish dietary laws, are not strange at all. And that most people have diets that they follow anyway, even without thinking about it. So here we go. Number one, and you all got it right, health reasons, okay? I eat certain foods or don't eat certain foods for health reasons. When I was growing up, I was told I had to eat a balanced diet. And what did that mean? Couldn't eat all of one kind of food. You have to have the basic food groups. You need your carbohydrates, your vegetables, your fruits. You needed your protein. In other words, someone told me if you do not eat a balanced diet, you're not going to be nutritionally sound. You can make up for it and eat other things. But if you want to be healthy for health reasons, you've got to eat what they call the balanced diet. Various kinds of foods. You need to eat foods that are rich in certain kinds of nutrients. I need to eat foods that have proteins in them. Carbohydrates give me energy. I need a certain amount of fats in my diet. Certain foods provide me with vitamins. I didn't realize how important fruits and vegetables were because of vitamins. I thought if I wasn't getting the right vitamins, I'd just go to the store and buy vitamins and get my vitamins artificially. But before they had vitamins, people had to eat foods for the sake of vitamins. Isn't it scurvy or something? If you don't eat vitamin C, you get that, and rickets. There were diseases that were caused by a lack of certain vitamins. And even if you were getting the vitamins in your food, if you weren't going outside and it wasn't being activated by the sun, you still weren't getting your proper nutrients. Natural foods versus processed foods. Okay, I'm a big processed food fan, but I have learned over the years there is a difference between eating what are called natural foods, whole grain foods, the normal foods, and eating other kinds of foods which are called processed. When I was younger, I loved white bread. I rarely eat white bread anymore. Okay, now I whole grain, I eat rye, I eat wheat toast, I eat all kinds of things, but I rarely eat rye bread because it's so processed. There's no nutrient value in it. Whatever nutrient value there might be, it's all bleached away. So I eat for health reasons. Another kind of medical concern are foods that I eat because of health reasons as well. Someone said allergies. There are literally allergies for all kinds of food. And if you happen to be one of those people who suffers from a lot of food allergies, one of the first problems they have is they have to figure out which foods you're allergic to. I don't know if you've gone through the step where they actually test you with different kinds of food. They first have to isolate what it is you're allergic to. And it could be anything. There are people that are literally allergic to anything. People cannot drink milk. Sometimes that has an ethnic background. Cannot drink milk because their body doesn't metabolize it. So they have milk, no good. People can't eat nuts. People can't eat certain fruits and vegetables. These are all kinds of diets from which people develop allergies, which can be really quite severe. People eat for other health reasons too. You may be on a low cholesterol diet. Why? Because you don't want to eat too many cholesterols because you know it's bad for your larger health, your heart health. Fat-free diets, reduced salt diets, okay? As I've gotten older, I used to be a big salt fan. I rarely eat salt anymore. My wife and I, when we sit and we eat, we go out, if we order fries, No salt, please. No seasoning. We don't want it. We never add seasoning to anything. If we do add seasoning occasionally, maybe it's pepper or something like that, but we avoid the excess salts. Some of us, because of the way we eat, have blood sugar problems. Diabetes is an example of what you can get yourself into if you don't restrict what you eat and don't watch what you eat, and you don't monitor yourself. You can develop a very serious medical condition. You can lose limbs of your body. You can throw yourself into dietetic shock if you don't watch what you eat. Diabetes, other blood sugar diseases, foods that concern the heart, healthy heart diets. You got to watch what you eat in your heart. You don't want not only low cholesterol foods, but you want to eat certain foods that don't cause other kinds of problems. You have to watch about what you eat for health reasons. So a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons, maintain special diets because of health. Now, whatever your diet is, and I'm not going to go around and ask you what your restrictions are or what you get, but I would guarantee that probably most of you on the screen right now, there is some kind of restriction in your diet that you do for health reasons. Because even if it wasn't immediately serious, like your throat was going to close and you were going to have a tear, it is just better for you to watch what you eat, because if you continue to eat the wrong things, then in terms of your health, you're going to decline and eventually you're going to pay a price. Now, all right. And I've already talked about the difference between natural food and chemical additives. I don't know about you, but I don't know half the things that the chemicals that are put into food. Part of the problem with kashrut is the things that are in the food that are chemicals. Are they derived from natural sources? And if they are, was it an animal source or a non-animal source? Okay. But when I eat food, I ask myself, what are these chemicals they're adding in? And are these chemicals harmful? And is it going to result in hurting me? There are foods that I used to eat where I learned that there were certain food additives that were not healthy for you, where you could get very sick with certain additives. I understand from people who grow food that depending on where you buy your fruits and vegetables, pesticides can be real problems when it comes to eating. That the food may be a good food by itself, but depending upon where it's grown and the pesticides that the crops are treated with, you might be bringing into your system, you might be indulging in things which are going to be positively harmful to your self through either chemical additives or other kinds of additives. Environmental concerns, okay? I know certain people who do not eat meat anymore because they don't feel that the earth can sustain everybody eating meat. Cattle eat too much grain, and you can't feed the world if you feed the cattle too. So they become vegetarians or vegans. I'm sure you all know vegetarians or vegans, right? These are people who eat it not necessarily for health reasons. They just believe that ecologically speaking, it is not sound for most of the world to eat diets rich in meat and whatnot, not only because of their health effects, but because meat consumes so much more environmentally speaking than does grain. And that if you are not a vegetarian or you are not a vegan, or if you don't maintain some other food controls, you don't have diets where you take that into account, you're not being responsible to the earth, because the earth cannot continue to sustain it. And having traveled through the country and traveled through areas where cattle are raised and whatnot, it's not the most aesthetic experience to pass a cattle ranch or something and to smell the animals. If you've ever experienced that or been to a farm and smelt the animals, it's not the most aesthetic thing either. So there are people who, for environmental concerns, the cost of feed, if you feed animals feed, then it raises the price of all kinds of other things. Animals need to feed, therefore grain needs to be fed, and therefore farmers use grain for cattle and whatnot. All right. So environmental concerns is a factor. All right. Now let's go through aesthetic concerns that some of you have already said aesthetic concerns. That for most of us is where we began our diets, unless we began keeping kosher in our home. We ate what we ate, if not because of health, because we realized that if we felt free to eat whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted it, we were going to be in big trouble. And I must confess in front of all of you who are on screen right now that I have an addictive personality. Okay, my wife's laughing in the other room. But those of you who know me know my self-control is really, really bad, okay? And because I'm an addictive personality, I will eat things that I know I shouldn't eat. And it doesn't take too much to convince me to do it. I can be satisfied. My wife could say, "Are you hungry?" "No, are you hungry? Do you want any more?" "No, fine. How about some, dessert I can have." "Yeah, dessert I'll have." Okay, it doesn't take much to get me into trouble. It's not even that I'm eating because I'm hungry, because I'm not, or eating because, or any other reason. It's just, I have no control. Aesthetically, I like to eat tasty things, and that's what I want. And you put the right thing in front of me, even if I'm full, I'm going to eat it. All right. So I eat to gain control. By the way, that's a reason why some people fast, to gain control. Okay. People feel that we are not slaves to our stomach. Our brain is located higher than our stomach, to tell us that the brain controls the stomach doesn't control the brain. And if you know what I mean, you know that for many people, even though they know what they're eating is wrong, even though they know it's bad for them, even though they know it's rich in calories, even though that they know that there may be health problems as a result of eating it, somehow or other they have to gain control. And kashrut is a wonderful way of keeping control. If I can control what I put into my mouth, if I can control what I eat, not because I want it, but because even though I want it, I'm stronger than my desires. My desires are not subject to my whims, they're subject to my intellect. Okay. And by the way, this goes for sexuality and a lot of other things too. People say all is fair in diet and love. And, if it's a basic human instinct, we can't control it. We can control it. We can learn to control the way we eat. And sometimes fasts are a way of controlling it. People say, I need to cleanse my system out. Some people regularly fast, not for religious reasons. They fast because they say, I've been eating a lot of garbage. I need to clean my system out. I need to start again. And so they'll go on these spiritual health, whatever you want to call it, fast. But mostly they fast to demonstrate that they are in control of their eating. Their eating doesn't control them. So there is another reason for eating, for aesthetic, for control factors, psychological factors, you could call it. Some people eat because of ethnic or cultural or environmental factors. And this is just your particular background. There are certain foods I've never been particularly fond of, and therefore I could go into a restaurant, you could try and tempt me as much as you want, and it's probably not going to work too much because either it's too spicy, too hot, whatever. Asian cuisine I like occasionally, but I'm not a real big fan of Asian cuisine. What?
Get to the point.
Get to the point. My wife is yelling at me, get to the point. Because I don't, certain restaurants, because of the smells, the spices, whatever, I can't eat Indian food. Can't eat Indian food for whatever reason. I've never developed a taste for curry. The smell of curry gets me going. If I walk into an Italian restaurant and the Parmesan is grated and it's too strong, I have to walk out. So for me, there are cultural decisions to make in terms of what I eat. But you put me in an environment where I smell something that I remember from childhood, I'm salivating. By the way, the strongest sense you have is your sense of smell. You can smell something that you haven't smelled since childhood, and it immediately brings back a childhood memory. More than sight, more than anything else, your nose smells something and you can instantly be transported back. I mean, I guess we're animals who once had a more developed sense of smell. It can take you right back to where you were. All I need to do is walk into something, smell it, and I'm back there again. I've kept kosher most of my life. But there were times when I went on camping trips or whatnot, I woke up and I smelt the bacon and the ham and the whatnot, and I was almost beside myself. Did I need the food? Probably not. but all I had to do was smell it. All I had to do was smell that bacon going on the fire, smell that, and that was it. I had no self-control. Another factor, ethical concerns. How many of you, when you eat, think about the ethical dimension of what you're doing? If you eat animals, there's a whole ethical aspect to eating. You got to ask yourself this. When I go into a supermarket, I don't think about a cow because all the meat is wrapped in containers and whatnot, and it doesn't look anything like a cow. If every time I walked into a store, I really thought about what I was doing, if I had to go out into my farm and kill the lamb or kill the cow or whatever in order to eat, I probably would eat a lot less meat. And I don't eat a lot of meat, but I would eat a lot less meat than I do. Silence of the Lambs times, right? Yes, I can convince myself, you put a nice burger in front of me in a kosher restaurant, I'm fine. But when I really think about it, if I think about the fact that an animal had to give up its life in order for me to be able to eat it, when I think about the conditions under which animals are raised today, especially in these mass production farms, where they're not raised individually and in single pens, but they're raised in crowded conditions, in terribly inhumane situations. When I think about the actual process of slaughtering, and when I remember my times when I actually visited a slaughterhouse and saw the way it was done and saw the terror of the animals, nothing can turn me off to eating like that, okay? Never developed a penchant for hunting. Never killed an animal myself. Never did. That I'm sure would have done it too. But I never hunted an animal. The one time I ever fished, I went out with my uncle on Long Island many, many years ago. I was a kid. We went out on Long Island, I brought in 2 or 3 fish. I landed them. It was exciting. I landed them. Then I watched them flopping around and gasping for air. And I couldn't do it anymore. I said, I spent the rest of the time on the boat just enjoying it. I could not bring out these fish and watch them suffocate to death, either with a hook or a net or whatever it was. I couldn't do it. I mean, you can ask Randy, I'm in a spot where unless the animal scares me, like a spider, I don't kill things. Even flies or ladybugs or things like that, crickets, I catch them and I release them. I'm strictly catch and release. My idea is I didn't create life. How can I wantonly go ahead and destroy life? Now you may say, come on, Randy, but Rabbi, a bug is a bug, And you're right. When I see something that scares me, like a black widow spider or probably a rattlesnake or tarantula, I probably could bring myself to do it. But the truth of the matter is, when I think about eating and I think about taking a life of an animal, it bothers me terribly. And when I know about what goes on, how animals are treated before they're slaughtered, while they're slaughtered, and the inhumanity sometimes of the very means of slaughter, that the animal does in fact suffer not only pain, but suffers terror and psychological trauma in being slaughtered, that's enough to turn me off of certain kinds of food too. I eat kosher. Part of the reason I keep kosher is because a big aspect of kosher is even when I eat animals as opposed to plants where the animal had to be slaughtered, I know that a certain process has been followed, and I know that there are certain protections in place that guarantee that the animal whose life is taken, there's a certain reverence for that life. And I guess in many early societies, early Indian native societies, there was a certain reverence for the life that you took. When you took something from the land, an animal or something, there was a sense of gratitude, of reverence for the life that you took, a thankfulness to the powers that created animal life, that give you the ability to take the animal for food or for clothing or for housing or for whatever an animal skin or hide could be used for. There was a recognition that though we were human beings and dependent upon eating other animals because we were omnivores, we couldn't become callous. We couldn't go out and just kill animals because we wanted to eat. And for those of you who have hunted or trapped or done other things before, raised on farms and done this before, if you can do it, I respect the fact that you can, but I could not. If I did not have the supermarket and the kosher meat market, I would never probably be able to eat meat on my own because I couldn't do it. Okay, I wouldn't even be good in a chicken coop. I couldn't do what had to be done. I know I can't do fish anymore, so I have to buy my fish at the store. Okay, and fine. And going on, There is one last category, which is really the theme of all this, the religious category. After all these reasons why people restrict their food, it does not seem so strange that people restrict their food for religious reasons. Now, without me telling you why, can someone give me, apart from reverence for animal life and the ethical treatment of animal and other factors, ecological, economic, what religion has to do with what you eat or don't eat? Does anybody want to explain that to me rather than me explain it to you? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, very, very specifically, Leviticus. I mean, I think it's chapter 11 onwards. Tells you exactly what you can and cannot eat. And that's it. And that's the end of it, as far as I'm concerned.
All right. If you're Jewish, by the way, that's the only reason you not need. I read a book that said, I Googled, why do Jews keep kosher? And they said, there are all kinds of subsidiary benefits to keeping kosher, but basically the correct answer is because God said so. God said keep kosher, okay? Meaning certain animals you eat, certain animals you don't eat. Even the animals that you eat have to be slaughtered in a certain way. The blood has to be treated a certain way. Blood, which is symbolized as life, you cannot eat blood like you eat meat. You have to pour off or you have to remove the blood because blood is a symbol of it. So for Jews, it's very simple, as Mike says. You turn to the religious books and it says these foods you can eat and these foods you cannot eat. Now, next week, we're going to learn that some of those rules began with religious taboos. Judaism is not the only religion that has rules about what you can eat and don't eat. Most religions have rules about what is taboo, what is forbidden, and what is permitted, going back to ancient civilizations. And in your readings that I will give you, it will have a long explanation of this. But believe it or not, the original reasons for special diets had nothing to do with health, had nothing to do with aesthetics. In those days, being very portly and healthy was considered a sign of your wealth. It had to do with religion. It had to do with the fact that various religions said these things you may eat and these things you may not eat. And if you eat of them, you have violated a religious taboo. If you are Hindu, it might be a cow. Okay. If you're Jewish, it might be pork. Okay. I've seen a couple of Joseph and then Michael. Go ahead.
Yes. So I grew up Catholic,
Mhm.
and on Fridays,
Mhm.
we were forbidden to eat meat.
During Lent.
No, every
No?
Friday.
Really?
Every
Every,
Friday.
During Lent.
every Friday, we didn't eat meat, and the priest said it was because that's a day that we think about God,
Mhm.
give up, and we thank God for what we've done, and we give up something so that we recognize that God's presence at our table. So every Friday, it was either fish, or it was tomato soup and grilled cheese, or it was my favorite was the cheese pizza. Yeah, that was the day I would.
Very good. And by the way, it had nothing to do with Lent, giving up something particular. Lent, you were supposed to give up something for Lent, but this was a regular routine. Regularly on Fridays in Catholic homes, you just did not eat meat. It was a meatless meal. And whether it was fish or whether it was something else, you just knew that because you were Catholic, on Fridays, you didn't eat meat. Of course, then they changed the rules and screwed everybody around. So, I love the episode of Raymond where he goes to a Catholic priest and he says, "Oh, I've eaten so many meat meals on Friday," and the Catholic priest says, "Oh, we don't do that anymore." So sometimes it changes, but yes, that's a religious routine. Someone else had a hand up. Remind me who it was. Okay, okay, Mark, and then Gary. Mark, go ahead.
So one of the things that I've heard is part of the reason for some of the dietary restrictions in Leviticus are to ensure the integrity of the Jewish people, to keep them from mixing with the Canaanites.
Very
because
good.
if you can't eat with somebody, you're not going to marry their daughter.
Very good, Larry. But
And then I also want to throw one more thing in.
Sure, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I have read in more than one place that part of the reason that the Catholics don't eat meat on Friday is because the fishermen's lobby got to a particular pope, and it came in for that reason. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard it in more than one place.
I have not heard that. Did anybody else heard that? Mark
No.
mentions an interesting reason. I have not heard that, Mark. I mean, and maybe that's the reason for it. But the truth of the matter is that there are probably all kinds of reasons for a lot of the customs that we have concerning certain kinds of food. I mean, by the way, if you think Catholics not eating meat on Friday is odd, think about Muslims not eating from sunrise to sunset during the month of Ramadan, fasting all day until the sun goes down, and then having a festival each day in the evening where they eat only in the evening, because in the month of Ramadan, you're not allowed to eat during the days. Or a Jew who doesn't eat, doesn't eat chametz, leavened goods during the days of Pesach, of Passover. There are lots of religions that have rules about what you can eat and when. Now, there are lots of reasons for it, health reasons, self-control, a lot of reasons, but religious reasons are valid reasons. What I'm trying to tell you here is, don't poo-poo the idea that people originally restricted their diet based on religious reasons. It may, in fact, be the origin of all diets. It may, in fact, be the case that the first restrictions on food were religious restrictions. Taboo. Certain animals are associated with good, certain animals are associated with evil. We're going to talk about Zoroastrianism next week. Certain animals are associated with the god of goodness. There's a dual deity. Other foods are associated with the god of evil. You don't eat foods that are associated with the god of evil. Even to eat them or to trap them or to utilize them or even to touch them can be polluting. So religion has its say in this too. There is a religious reason why people feel, in addition to all the other reasons we have mentioned, there is a religious reason why people fail. God did not intend for us to eat everything. And here's what Larry's point is. If I don't eat certain kinds of food because God says don't eat it, I'm thinking about God all the time. Every time I smell bacon and I say, I'd love to eat that bacon, it smells delicious, it would be wonderful, I remember what it was when I was a kid, but I don't eat it, I think about God. Every time I can't eat at certain restaurants because they have no foods that are kosher or that I could eat as kosher, and therefore I have to avoid those kinds of restaurants because I do not eat certain kinds of food, it reinforces the fact that I am Jewish. So what Larry is saying is what Mark is saying is very, very important. He is saying for religious reasons, the Jewish dietary laws guarantee that we socialize and we mix and we come together with other people who share these dietary habits, that these dietary habits reinforce identity, reinforce our sense of identity as Jews or Muslims or Hindus or whatever. It reinforces our identity. Someone else. Go ahead, Gary. Gary, you're unmute.
I was going to say, isn't it a commitment to yourself as to how you would want to live your life?
Yes, a commitment to yourself, Gary. It can be for any one of a number of reasons. It can be a commitment. I'm concerned about my health. I'm not going to eat certain kinds of foods. God told me not to eat certain kinds of foods, even though I might enjoy them. I don't eat milk because the idea of mixing a symbol of life, milk, with meat, death, is inappropriate. Whatever the reason is, it's my reason, Gary, that I carry with me, whether it's originally a religious reason or whatnot. That reason demonstrates to me that I am in control of my eating. As an addictive personality, as a relatively weak person when it comes to regulating something as everyday as eating, it gives me a sense of strength to know that I decide what I eat. It's not my circumstances that define what I eat. It's my decision based on a lot of different factors. Good. Anybody else? Go ahead. I see you, Jerry. Go ahead.
Two things that I've experienced. One, I don't remember. I was 4 years old, met a gathering. My father's family was Swedish Norwegian, and I was told he was proud of me because I tasted something called lutefisk. That's salted cod on a board and it's buried or whatever. And my dad would say, you're better off throwing the fish away and eating the board. And then secondly, I was in an Irish restaurant and Irish breakfast, and I'm asked if I wanted to have some puddings. So I like puddings, but apparently they were blood sausage, just, I nearly retched.
And it can even be something you like. I'm going to jump onto Jerry's story. When I was sick as a little boy, my mom would always do the same thing. She would always give me tea and Jello. I can't explain why, but I cannot eat tea or Jello to this day. Okay, because to me that's associated with being sick. People around me eat Jello. I said, I can't eat Jello. My mom gave me Jello whenever I said, I can't look at Jello anymore. I can't drink tea. I eat coffee, I can drink, but tea was what you got when you were sick. It's funny how it affects you inside you. You just associate certain foods, even if they're not bad tasting, even if they weren't disgusting, with certain experiences. And I admire people who don't have these restrictions, who like to try everything. They say, I'm not going to reject anything until I try it. But I can't do it. You put a piece of rattlesnake in front of me, there is no way I'm going to get the rattlesnake down. Even if it wasn't kosher. It's not kosher, but it's not. You want to put frog's legs in front of me, put as many frog legs as you want. I understand it's a delicacy. You want to put snails, you don't have to get them from my yard. You go to a nice restaurant and put them in the right sauce, the spice. Cannot eat it. I just cannot eat it. Ants, things like that. These are cultural things. These are cultural things. I cannot eat them. I just physically sicken even at the thought of them. Maybe if I manage to get them down, I could change my opinion, but I have no desire to get them down. All right. So I hope tonight that what I have shown you is we all have predilections. We all have certain things that we desire, certain reasons that we eat, but we also all have certain reasons that we refrain from eating certain things. What I have to convince you next week is the following. Among the various choices that you make for health, for aesthetics, for all the other reasons you eat or don't eat certain things, I'm going to try and convince you that spiritually, for religious reasons, it's a good idea to do it too. I'm going to try and take the Torah, as Mike said, and I'm going to try and show you how the Torah contains a genius system for creating restrictions on eating that are not only designed to remind me daily that the food I eat comes from God, that God makes me sensitive to it, that God makes me sensitive to the life of the animal that was taken, that God makes me sensitive to the manner in which the animal was slaughtered, but that the very laws of kashrut make me sensitive to the very act of eating, that not all is fair in eating, not anything goes. And therefore, I'm going to assign you readings tomorrow to try and bring you into the camp to show you that quite apart from holidays like Shabbos and the 7 major Jewish holidays, that if you can discipline the act of eating and you can do it for religious reasons, you can change your life as well. Okay. So that's all next week. Any questions? Anybody? All right. Well, thank you all for staying with me. Really, seriously, we've been together an hour. And the key to this is not to do too much. I will send you a lot of reading. Okay, so there will be reading to do. And I will introduce you to the original idea of taboos in eating and religious reasons. And I will try and show you how the earliest forms of taboos probably were all religious. But then I will show you how kashrut is not just another ancient taboo, not just another ancient religious particular diet system, but an ingenious system to awaken all of the factors that we have discussed tonight: health, aesthetics, control. Everything we've talked about tonight is actually embedded in the Jewish dietary laws. Thank you all. Feel free to visit.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi
Thank you,
Ron.
Rabbi.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rabbi. Thank you, Randy.
Oh,
Good night.
thank you all.
Night.
Look for these tomorrow. We'll put it on the air and you can watch it again if you want, if you missed it. Okay.
Rabbi, you said next week you're going to talk about Zoroastrianism?
I am going to talk about Zoroastrianism in order to explain the religious basis of diet, because originally, even before kashrut, going back to very early times, there were other restrictions on eating that go back to civilizations that are older than Jewish. And in order to explain that to you, I have to explain the religious basis of these taboos.
I'll look forward to that. We met a fella who's he refers to himself as Persian, and
Yes.
he was wearing the Zoroastrian symbol, and I recognized it. And he said, being that religion cost him his country and nearly his life.
Yes.
So pretty interesting to think
And
about.
it's an interesting concept because it's in some ways not Jewish, because it's not a unity of divinity, it's a duality of divinity, a power of good and a power of evil. So we'll talk about that next time. Take care, Jerry.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.